ReConnected. This is where we listen to stories from spinal cord tumor survivors. We aim to provide connection between survivors by telling our stories. Our purpose is to increase awareness about what life is like after being diagnosed with an intramedullary spinal cord tumor. Because our diagnosis is so rare, it is hard to find information from the patient perspective. At ReConnected, we talk with people living with the diagnosis and surviving the surgery. My name is Dawn Standera, and I'm a survivor of a C1, C2 intramedullary ependymoma. And that is spinal cord tumor lingo for a tumor inside my spinal cord, right at the tip top of my spine. And today we get to hear Shawna's story. Welcome, Shawna.
Thank you.
When were you diagnosed and where was your tumor?
I was diagnosed in January of 2015, and I have a tumor at C2, C3 intramedullary.
Hey, had you ever heard of a spinal cord tumor before being diagnosed?
No, and I was a nurse at the time too, and it was never taught to me, so it was a
Yeah,
huge shock.
same here. Same here.
Yeah.
So tell me how you got diagnosed.
I was actually working in the hospital. I was on duty in a labor and delivery unit, and we delivered a baby, and the baby needed some medical care. And my adrenaline rushed at the delivery, and I was trying to help the baby. And all of a sudden, my arms and hands and right leg went completely weak, and I couldn't function. So at that point, I knew something was going on. And one thing led to another, and I was ordered an MRI, and they found it. That's the rest
So
is history.
did they do a head and then happen to catch it because it was so high in the spine, or did they do a C spine?
They did a cervical spine MRI. Yep. I was getting it after I had my second son. The symptoms started a little bit, where when I would wash my hair with the repetitive arm motions or vacuum, I would start to get what I call zaps. And I learned later that it's Lhermitte's sign. Um, and it worsened with time. And then that incident happened at the hospital, and that was definitely a sign that I needed to get checked out. So,
I remember prior to surgery that I would get the Lermite sign when I would look to my right for oncoming traffic on the freeway,
hmm
and my arms would just zap and freeze for just
yes,
a few seconds. And I thought, well,
hmm
that's strange.
yeah,
But, yeah, they
exactly.
would go away. And
When my head is down or up, it happens as well. So I try to keep my head pretty stationary, or move my body. If I have to look down, I move, my upper torso to prevent that from
yeah,
happening.
because you have a really, and a lot of people may be familiar with Shauna's story. She did write a chapter for our book, Reconnected. So I know her story, and some of you may that are listening, but you have a unique situation in that you had surgery and have some tumor uh, left behind. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I went in for surgery in early February of 2015. So it was about a month after diagnosis. Locally, nobody felt comfortable taking care of me. So I ended up leaving the area. Um, so I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, away from my kids. So that was really hard. But they weren't able to get the tumor out in my case. Any of it. They could barely get even a shred for pathology. So um, they don't have a firm diagnosis as to what kind of tumor it is, just based on the cells that they can see under a microscope. They believe that it was, at first, they thought it was an ependymoma and that it would be really simple to remove, not simple, but in spinal cord tumor operation cases,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably more of a simple removal. Um, but this ended up being, they think it's ganglioglioma, possible ependymoma. They don't really know, but it's still there in its entirety. So they closed me back up, and I had radiation therapy after that area healed. and that stopped the growth. I've had MRIs every 6 months since then, and then it went to every year, and now we're at 8 years post-op, so still no growth, thank goodness.
I had my surgery in December of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same year you did later, and I'm now 8 years, post-op as well. And I think about you sometimes, we have very parallel lives in a lot of ways. Nurses, upper cervical tumors, fiber artists, same interests. But my tumor was removed completely,
Mm-hmm.
and you're living with yours. So can you talk about the mental demands of continuing to live with the tumor as well as the after effects physically of the surgery?
Yeah, for me, this experience completely changed my life. And it's my own little journey. It doesn't happen that way for everybody, but this hit my identity. Anything that I was connected to, that I identified with changed for me. Um, because having this tumor still there doesn't allow me to function as a registered nurse anymore. And that was my life, like my children, my family, and nursing. Um, so that's been hard, um, because in order to be a nurse in any capacity, if you're taking care of patients, you have to be able to provide CPR. Even if you're in nursing management at a hospital, you have to be, if you're passing in a hallway, able to try to save somebody's life. And that's how I knew I had a tumor, was because I was trying to save somebody and couldn't. So it's too dangerous, for me to do that. Um, so yeah, it's been hard in that way. The post-op um, nerve issues are bothersome. You learn to live with it. You said something in your chapter about how it feels like the nerves are on the outside of your body, like in your legs.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that nobody can ever understand. I would never have been able to understand that if somebody told me that before, because it's nothing that anybody feels normally.
Oh, I
Um,
completely agree. I've said that over and over again. If as many times as I tried to imagine what people were talking about it, there's just no frame of reference. It's too
yeah,
weird. Yeah, it's
hmm
just too weird.
it is. It's a very weird sensation, and it's. I call it an invisible disability because my shoes will fall off a little bit while I'm walking, and but people see me walking and I walk fine. You can't see that there's an issue, but inside it feels bizarre to be in this body now. So that those are the things that are a little weird. Walking on uneven terrain will cause me to fall usually, like if I'm in the woods or something. Um, I'm careful. I've learned to kind of work around the tumor. I know what my limits are. I push them often. um, but after this, I taught myself handcrafts to keep busy, and it's really been helpful. In the hospital, when I was recovering from surgery, I taught myself how to knit, and I knit my children and my husband a hat. Um, I wanted them to have something that I made with my own hands. Uh, and then I learned how to quilt and sew and make clothes. And now I learned pottery. So it opened up doors to new things for me. Um,
Are your hands affected by the
I have
surgery
some, I have some numbness,
on
and
both
I'm clumsy.
sides? Both
Yes.
sides?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm clumsy. I'll drop things frequently when I'm
Mm-hmm.
holding knitting needles that are really thin. Sometimes I can't feel them and they'll fall out of my hands, but I'm so lucky. I know how lucky I am to have functioning hands. After the surgery, I remember waking up, uh, and I wasn't paralyzed. I was able to move freely, but I couldn't feel where my body was in space. And
Right.
that's great term proprioception, which I had no idea about, prior. Um,
Yeah.
they would wiggle my toes, and I had no idea what direction My
Right.
toes were,
Me
so
too. Yeah.
those little neuro tests. So it's a bizarre experience, but it's really, it changes you and changes good. I'm not saying that this is a good thing to happen, but when you look at the bright side, um, you're forced to change, and everything in the world changes. So change is good. It's just really uncomfortable and scary. But there are people to help and there's support out there. So,
That's a couple of things I took away from your chapter that I can't pull it up right now, but just to remember that people do love us and we are worthy of love. And even though our bodies have been damaged is a strong word, but altered, by the surgery, we
mhm.
still need help and we still deserve love. And I'm having this memory. I keeps coming into my mind. So I'm gonna go back to a previous conversation because my nursing career changed for 7 years after, well, 7 years. So I stopped being an ER nurse the year before surgery because I had the same experience you did and I knew about the tumor and I just didn't feel safe that I knew I shouldn't be working in the ER anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and then after surgery, I didn't work for, maybe 6 or 8 months, but I tried to return to ER and the adrenaline hit me when a trauma came in. And I was always, pretty much always took the traumas. So they just called me because I looked fine. They're like, Dawn, you're taking the trauma. Like, oh, okay. I guess I remember how to do this. And I walked into the room and the adrenaline that used to make me feel very focused overwhelmed my nervous system. And I couldn't open the IV package. I couldn't peel the paper apart. And I was dropping things and I just said, I'm out. I can't. I'm done. And I walked out. I went and talked to my supervisor and said, I'm not ready. I have
Oh.
no business being here. And so I did do, yeah, yeah. So I completely know what a heartbreak it is to have a total career change, um, and to not trust my body in a way that it served me before, where I could rely on it. And why are my hands doing this? Why do I feel like it made me feel like when you ring a gong and the reverberations of the gong kind of go throughout the room. That's what it felt like. Like my nervous system was just going all over the room. I thought I can't do anything like this.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I did do a career change as well for 3 years in case management in ER, and then now I am actually back working half time as an ER nurse, and that has calmed, and I am comfortable. My nervous system is calmer now, but
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes
it
you can just look at the other things that you can do. I'm still trying to brainstorm as, things I can do as a nurse. And I thought maybe being a doula in the future, because I wouldn't be responsible for,
yeah,
emergencies. I'm just there for support. So that's something.
yeah. You've got the right demeanor for it. If I were ever have a baby, that ship has sailed. But if I were, I would like to have you by my side for sure.
Oh, it would be my pleasure. I loved it. It was great. It was a great
Ah,
experience. I was teaching childbirth classes and breastfeeding classes, and so it
yeah.
was.
How does your family adjust it? How have your kids adjusted? Do they think about it much, do you think?
They do. My both of them do actually. They're very supportive and helpful. If they see me pushing my limits, they're always there to be like, "Mom, don't do that."
I have a
So,
husband that does that, yeah. I do. So when I push my limits, my neurosymptoms expand and get greater. What's your experience with that? How do you know when you've pushed too far?
so usually it's walking a lot. The vibration, I think, of the pounding on the pavement as I walk makes things inflamed. And so I'll start to get the zaps again. I'll start to get some weakness in my arms and leg. Only the right leg, but both arms. Um, I'll get the banding around, you
Mm,
know, which
hmm.
that was new too. I didn't know what that was about. I asked the doctor after I woke up from surgery, why do I feel like there's a belt around me, like a tight belt?
Height,
Um,
yeah.
so it would be like that, and then I would get nauseous from that inflammation.
Mhm.
And that's mostly what it is. And then if I'm in a store shopping where you have to turn to look at the aisles,
Mhm.
uh, I'll get the nausea and zaps and also some muscular pain, from the surgery. So
Yeah, it's a lot to deal with. Yeah.
I know. And it seems like
What would you tell
everybody,
yourself? No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
it seems like everybody's symptoms are so different depending where the tumor is. That's so important where it's located, because the spinal cord, as you know, controls everything in your body. So depending where it is, your symptoms will change.
I think that's really important, and I do want to take a minute to talk about that. Some people have reached out to me and say, "Would you please do extramedullary, intradural?" I'm like, "No, you do that." My experience is intramedullary, but I kind of laugh about it, and I shouldn't because they have their own issues that are challenging, and I understand that, but I just don't understand it on a personal level, experiential level.
Yeah,
Um, but I do think it's really important to define terms because people will be diagnosed with an intradural, which is outside the spinal cord, and they'll come out of these surgeries really well,
right.
compared to people with intramedullary surgeries. So I think an understanding of where someone's tumor is key to having some sort of gauge of what their post-surgical life will be like.
Exactly. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why, yeah, intramedullary only here. But please feel free, everyone else, to do whatever YouTube channel you'd like on whatever you like.
Yeah, definitely. There's somebody out there that would benefit from the knowledge for sure. I feel like when
100%.
I was diagnosed, there was not anything out there. Maybe I wasn't looking in the right places. I was Googling a lot.
There wasn't.
I don't remember searching or maybe finding anything on Facebook as far as groups. Maybe there was, but I didn't. It felt very lonely at the time in 2015. And so I started a cervical intramedullary Facebook group.
Yep.
Um, and then later, with my life changes and everything, I just couldn't keep up with social media. So somebody else is taking care of that, but it was really nice to be able to connect with people who specifically have cervical intramedullary
Mhm.
tumors. I noticed too that a lot of health professionals outside of spinal cord tumor care, like my primary or, anybody for that matter, doesn't really understand the magnitude of where this tumor is, that it's in such a delicate location. Um, I feel like when I say spinal cord tumor, people think it's a tumor on the bony part of the spine, which doesn't
Right. Yeah.
seem as big of a deal, but it is, of course, but it's not, a lot of people don't know about it or understand, I think, and that's hard.
It's lonely. I think what you said, I can attest to the fact that there was nothing out there in 2015 when I had surgery. I spoke to two people prior to surgery that had had a spinal cord surgery.
Mm.
And I would say that those are probably the two most important conversations, uh, maybe in my life. I was just desperate to have some sense of, as a nurse, I had an understanding that a C1 tumor is a bad idea, because I know from trauma, like if have a C1 spinal cord injury, you're in trouble. And so I had some sense, but I really was underprepared for the experience after surgery, which is, of course, the reason I did what I did, which was just write a book and try and get others to share their stories so that no one had to wake up like you and I woke up,
Mm.
not feeling our body, not knowing where our bodies ended.
Yeah, all that information feels like it was not given to me. I knew that there was a small, not even a large risk of being paralyzed. And I don't know why, as a nurse, I didn't worry more about that going into the surgery.
Huh.
I
Seems like you should have, Shawna.
I was very scared, Dawn. I don't know what. Back, I'm like, I probably should have been a little scared, but I wasn't. And I
Probably
don't
should
know,
have been a little scared.
I don't know if that's from working in the operating rooms. I used to scrub in and help with surgeries and stuff. So I don't know.
Mm, mm.
But waking up was different. It was nothing like how my patients used to wake up from C-sections or gallbladder removal.
Yeah, no kidding. So how long so you're in the hospital for 2 weeks?
It was 2 weeks at the hospital post-op, and
Okay.
then I did some physical therapy there because when I woke up, um, the first time my feet hit the floor, I couldn't feel the floor. It felt like I was floating. So
Yeah.
um, we went through that, and then I flew back home and stayed in a hospital here for about 3 weeks, I think, and did PT and OT here locally, which was nice because I was able to see the kids. I ended up getting Cushing syndrome from the preoperative steroids. So that was a whole other experience. I'm very sensitive to medication, so this doesn't happen to everybody, but Cushing syndrome made me gain about 70 pounds, and I had acne, like disgusting marks all over my body. I
As
had
if it couldn't get worse enough.
I had like
It's terrible.
thick male facial hair on my
Wow.
face. I
Mm,
had that moon face, a huge
yeah,
abdomen. I just didn't know what was happening to me. It just seemed like everything was just,
that's a lot.
yeah. And my mom passed away later that year. So it was a really difficult year. It was a year of change for sure.
Yeah. And the Cushing obviously is resolved. So
Yes, that
with
reason.
did it end with steroid use ending? Or
Yes, once we
okay.
stopped the steroid use, that started to even out. My
Okay.
hormones went back to normal.
Whew. Yeah, that's a lot. So 3 weeks in rehab, and then did you do some outpatient therapy after
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, for a
Yeah.
little while, PT was coming to the house to help me because I had a two-story home, so the stairs were an issue.
Mhm.
I still fall downstairs every now and then, so I have to be really careful. If I'm not looking at them, my feet will just miss them sometimes. Um,
Is it because you're floating, or is it because you don't feel them, or what is
I
going on with that,
don't,
you think?
I can't feel the floor underneath me still.
Okay.
I can feel cold and warm more than I can feel pressure in my feet and my legs.
Okay.
So if I'm not looking at the steps, I'm taking a chance. We'll put it
Yeah.
that way.
Well, if I can feel the floor now, but I'll tell you that I would never go up and down stairs without looking at the stairs. I would just if it would be foolish for me, or even holding on to something, I still would. I'm having this memory of I would tap things with my feet in the first few years. It was about, I think, the fourth or fifth year that I started being able to feel my feet on the floor again. But um, yeah, I would tap things. I would listen. Was
Mhm.
I could feel hot and cold, warm and cold too. I never lost my temperature sense, but I definitely lost the ability to feel pressure, and
Touch.
sound helped me, and touch.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's gotten better. It's still altered, it's still not what it was before surgery, but
Hmm.
it's changed quite a bit.
Hmm.
So you're having 6 month, no, annual MRIs now.
Annual. Yeah.
Okay. And how much radiation did you have?
I had radiation. It was Monday through Friday every day for, oh gosh, I don't want to give you the wrong information.
Oh, that's okay. A
Let's say about
while.
a month,
Okay.
maybe.
Was that
Um,
tiring? I hear radiation's tiring.
yes, it was
Yeah.
very tiring, and I had a baby at the time. So
Oh,
my family was so supportive. Um, I couldn't have asked for a better support system. It's so important.
yeah. So now it's just annual checks and
Yeah,
no growth?
no growth. Knock on wood.
Yay. I actually had my annual because I still have annual MRIs, even though the tumor's been gone. My neurosurgeon has said to me, "I want to know about it before you're symptomatic," because I do have the option of radiation yet if it recurs. So Anyway, I had mine on Friday and we're all clear.
You did?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
congratulations. That's
Thank
exciting.
you. Yeah. I don't worry about it much, but I have to say, you get and I don't mind going in the MRI. I find it kind of cozy, but
Hmm.
I still, there's still that, oof, what a bummer it would be to find out that would come back.
Right. How quickly your life can shift again.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yep. And that's
Well,
another thing I didn't know either was that radiation on the spinal cord, you can only do one round of it. That's at least what I was told because
that's
it's
what I was
such a
told too. Yeah, you get one shot. Yeah. And I was told if he felt that there was tumor, there was evidence of tumor behind post-op that I would have radiation.
Mhm.
But because I was fortunate to have a total resection, that they were saving that for any future recurrence, even though the odds are incredibly in my favor for the good of not recurring.
Yeah.
Apparently, the further out we get from surgeries without a recurrence, the better our odds are that they won't. But um, I can see his point. He said, better I know first than you come and say, something's shifted. Then it's probably pretty big. Surgery is going to be our only option. So,
Hmm. Yeah, this
um,
is not an option, and neither is radiation now. So we'll
yeah,
stay positive.
yeah. The idea, people have second surgeries. I know they do, but the idea of it is incredible. It's so overwhelming and incredible.
Yeah, I have a funky little tumor in there. They weren't really sure what's going on. They had a couple neurosurgeons in there looking at it and had never seen anything like it. They said it was very hard and rubbery. The tool that
Mhm.
they used to break it up to remove it wouldn't break it up.
Yeah,
Um, so who knows? It's a mystery. It'll always
right.
be a mystery.
You've adjusted well. That's a hard, not knowing would be difficult for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
give
where
you a
you
lot of,
have I had to let go. I
mm.
couldn't because we can't control everything. We just can't.
Sean, I want to thank you again for being here today, and I want to thank you for writing a chapter for the book. And would you tell us just kind of as a closing here what it's meant to you to be in conversation with other people who've had spinal cord tumors?
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for asking me to be a part of your book. It's been an honor. Just, our relationship and knowing that you're there and other fellow spinal cord tumor survivors and, people who are going through it right now. It's meant so much to me to know that I'm not alone and to understand that everybody's situation is different and everybody will feel different things, but we're all kind of going through the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, it's been extraordinarily helpful for sure.
Thanks for being a part of that, for being a part of the solution.
Yeah. Thank you, Don.
All right. It's so great to see you, and thank you again. And we'll talk soon. And
Okay.
I look forward to maybe an update in a couple of years. How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.